Breaking tonight along the immigration front, there are new concerns about criminals passing undetected through the southern border into the U.S. We've talked about that before, but some concrete example right now. Correspondent Bill Melugin is in Eagle Pass, Texas this evening with the latest. Good evening, Bill.
Right, good evening to you. Concerning stuff here, we have learned that last month, Border Patrol released a suspected terrorist into the U.S. after he crossed illegally, and it took over 2 weeks for ICE to go rearrest him in the state of Florida. Take a look at this mugshot right here. This is Colombian citizen Isnardo Garcia Amado, and this information comes to us from a federal memo we obtained from a source. On April 18th, Garcia Amado was released by Border Patrol into the U.S. near Yuma, Arizona, after he crossed illegally. ICE fitted him with a GPS monitoring device. 3 days later, after his release, April 21st, the FBI's Terrorist Screening Center identifies Garcia Amado as a suspected terrorist on the terror watch list. His case was then referred to ICE in Florida, where he had resettled. Over 2 weeks later, on May 4th, ICE finally receives authorization to rearrest Garcia Amado. On May 6th, he's finally rearrested in Pinellas County, Florida, in the Tampa Bay area. He's booked into the local jail there. And on May 9th, he's released back into ICE custody. Now, I reached out to DHS and asked, how does something like this happen? They claim to vet every migrant before they release them into the U.S. And why would it take 2 weeks to go get a green light to go rearrest a suspected terrorist living in the U.S.? DHS really didn't answer those questions. Here's what they did say in part, quote, when we receive additional derogatory information from our law enforcement partners, DHS and our federal partners take swift action to apprehend those individuals. In this instance, after receiving additional law enforcement information, ICE, in coordination with federal and local law enforcement, promptly detained this individual who was already under supervision via a GPS monitoring device. Now, former ICE Director Tom Homan tells me there is nothing prompt about waiting 2 weeks to arrest a suspected terrorist living in the U.S. He calls what happened here a massive national security breach. Take a listen.
The focus of this administration is to process and release quickly, so there doesn't appear to be overcrowding, so there doesn't appear to be a crisis.
Now, I also reached out to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to get his reaction to all saying in part, quote, we demand to know why DHS released a suspected terrorist into the U.S. and allowed him to live freely in Florida for weeks. How many more known or suspected terrorists has the Biden administration allowed into our country? And Brett, earlier this month, you sat down with DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and you asked him about those 42 known or suspected terrorists who had crossed our border here within the last year or so. You asked him, does the government know where they are? Here's what he had to say.
We know where those 42 are, and I did not want to speak with respect to the disposition of each and every one of them. But we know where they are, and we've got our hands on it.
I guess from
it's a whole.
Sitting at home, are they worried about the 42 on the terror watch list?
They shouldn't be worried about the 42.
Now, we don't know if Garcia Amado is part of that 42 known or suspected terrorist reference, but what we do know is DHS confirms to us he is back in ICE custody right now as we speak. We'll send it back to you.